Is it live? Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as we review the morning news for Manchester United. And basically we're talking Amorim letting big stars go. Reports from Italy around Xerxes again. Also, people having their say on Marcus Rashford that it's the end of the road for him. I tell you what, if it's the end of the road, he keeps building a new road because we've been here before. I don't agree, but it's a news show and we'll talk about where that's coming from. Also, we've got the latest on what's going on with Old Trafford, big developments this week as well, and a new generational talent that apparently Amorim is in love with. I think we know who the source is with that, if you know who says he's in love with. So we'll talk about that as well. Also, a bit of transfer stuff, a player that still is on the target of Manchester United and we believe will be a Man United player by next September. We'll talk about that, opportunities as well, and a few bits I want to talk about. I want to talk about Kone, who isn't the generational talent, by the way, probably let something slip there. A bit about Garnacho and a few other bits as well to get into on the morning show. So I hope you're all doing very, very well. Van der Palmer, you've just got yourself blocked for being a twat. There we go. Goodbye. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you what he said, but... idiot. Right, let's get into it. No wing-backs today, chat, says Raval. If you want to talk about wing-backs, that's fine. That was last night, but we want to get into the news. It is a news show. I've got to calm down. Calm down, calm down. It's a news show, Goldbridge. Don't get agitated. Leave that for 8 o'clock when the real debates start. Loving the 8 o'clock shows in the international break. They're always brilliant. We've got a cracker for you tonight as well. But let's start off talking about Amorim to sell United stars. This is going to happen. Look, first of all, before I go into this about Xerxes and others, this will happen. We can't, as much as I want to go, he's only just got here. Why are people doing stories like this? Honestly, I have a pop at the media sometimes, but actually, I've got to be fair here and say, new manager, new start, Deadwood's been here for years. We obviously need to get rid of some players. So to sit here and go, oh, it's not fair is unfair because we all know players have got to go. The problem is it might be a player that you like, and that's where people get agitated. So Italian reports, not for the first time, happened in the international break, happening again. Juventus, AC Milan being mentioned, but primarily Juventus to bring Xerxes back to Italy in January. Look, I'm frustrated before I even start talking about this. I am going to run a bit of a poll. Does Xerxes have a future at Manchester United? And I'm hoping that people will say yes, because that is my opinion on it. What they're basically doing here is that Italian football appreciates Joshua Xerxes. Italian football, if you do well in Italian football for all my life, Batistuta, Signori, Vieri, all these great strikers that have scored goals in Italy for not necessarily fashionable clubs at times. If you score goals in the Italian league, they appreciate you. That's always been the way. And he has scored goals for Bologna and he is appreciated by Italian fans. So they would welcome him at Juventus. They would welcome him at AC Milan. He is considered to be, an Italian, not an Italian. He's considered to be a player that can score goals and do well in the Italian league. And he's proven that. So they would be very welcome. They would be very welcoming of him. And the reports, people would say, well, why is this happening? He's only been here 3 months. Well, obviously, Manchester United got him for a release clause of £34 million. So if people wanted him, the anticipation would be, if United were looking to get rid, you give them the £34 million back and they've lost nothing and they can just move on from what might have been a mistake, because £34 million is not a lot. So that's where it's coming from. The interest is there in Italy. The price would be reasonable. And if United want to move on and Xerxes wants to move on, there's going to be a lot of interest there. So I would take that on board. Normally, if we'd paid £70 million for him, I'd go, yeah, this is a load of rubbish. It's not economically viable. But it is. And I think also with Amorim coming in, a large part of this was happening when Ten Hag was here. These reports were here in the last international break. But because Amorim's come in, people are looking at it and going, well, look, he was a bit unsettled before. There's a new manager come in. Does he fit into Amorim's system? Well, he's not going to play as a holding midfielder in the pivot. He's not going to play out wide because it's too much running. He can play wide, but not in a 3-4-3. So he can only play, he can't play up front because he's not like the strikers that Amorim uses as the striker. So the only two places he can play is in the position behind the striker, which actually fits him like a glove, I would argue. So he's got two opportunities instead of one, because when we played one attacking midfielder, it was always going to be Bruno. Now it's always going to be Bruno, but there's another spot there. So I think that there is a chance for Xerxes to fit in. But some people are saying, we've had Pedro say it and other people have said it. Some people have said, well, all right, Amorim uses two attacking midfielders behind his striker, but they're not like Xerxes. They're more energetic, they're quicker, they're more technical in relation to, well, no, that's not fair. Xerxes is technical. But look, some people are saying he's not going to fit the system and therefore he's also a Ten Hag signing. But he's not really a Ten Hag signing, he's an Ineos signing. Ineos went for Xerxes after Ten Hag and Ineos wanted Sesko. So my feeling on this is, look, sometimes there is no smoke without a fire, but I do actually think that Xerxes has got as much chance as Mason Mount or Ahmad of getting that spot right now. I do. I genuinely think that. Stanley says he's too slow. I take it on board that, look, if you want my honest opinion, and I don't normally start feeding into these sort of stories and going, it could happen, I could sit here and go, this is absolutely preposterous. It's ridiculous. He's only been here for a few months. He's a new signing. We've got to be patient. He's not going anywhere. This sort of stuff is just damaging. It's the press again trying to derail Manchester United and cause issues that aren't there. And I actually believe everything I've just said there. I do. And I could do that. But I also go, well, if Amorim walks in and goes, he's not the right player, and you've got interest from Italy, and you can get that 34 million back, and Xerxes wants to go, you could just do it as well. So as much as I'm like, ridiculous, absolute joke, he's only just got here, Amorim it'll be fine. I agree with all those things, and we must protect and be patient with Xerxes as a new signing. And that's the stance I'm going to take. But I'm not going to sit here and say, I don't think there's a chance Amorim and Xerxes might not work well together, and it might just be, it doesn't work. They'll give us our money back. You'll go and play up front or in a system that suits you. Happy days. So we'll have to just wait and see what happens with it. But it could work really, really well at Man United, or it could be that he doesn't fit the system. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite and do a show like last night where we spend, half an hour going through Amorim's best team. Nobody put Xerxes in it. None of us put Xerxes in it. And is that a hint? Doesn't mean we were right, but nobody was putting Xerxes there. It was Ahmad and Bruno. Some said Rashford could do it. Some said Garnacho could do it. Some said Mount and Bruno. But nobody was saying Xerxes. So I think that maybe that's the thing. But Peter makes a great point. What about his wages, Mark? And that, to be honest, is a great point that even, I hadn't considered that. But what would you do if you were Amorim and you walked in and you went, he's never going to work in my system, and you spoke to Ineos, very close to saying something else. You spoke to Ineos. I think that's the first time I've done that. You spoke to Ineos and you say, look, good lad, I get it. I get why you bought him, but in my system, he's not going to work, and all he's going to do is depreciate in value. If you've got something lined up that you can get your money back, go and do it. What would you do if you were Ineos? Because if I was Ineos and the manager said, look, you brought me in to do a job, he is not going to work in my system. I will use him occasionally, but he's never going to be a first team player, so he's just going to depreciate. If you've got an offer now and you can get your money back, I would do it. What would you do if you're Ineos? Because I'd take the money. If my manager that I've brought in is saying, I like him, but he's never going to be anything other than a bit part player, then I would cash in. Of course I would. Hi, Mark. Like I said yesterday, Amorim had 7 wingers, Ben Jones says, at Sporting. He played with 2 wingers behind his main striker as well as having 2 wingers wide. Exactly. And as we said last night, Ben, nobody was putting Xerxes in the team. Look, I thought this was a ridiculous story in the last international break when Ten Hag was here. I think now Amorim's here. There could be something in it. I hope not. I hope that we can use him. I don't want to give up on new signings. He's only just come here. I thought he looked good against Leicester. But look, let's be realistic. There needs to be a cull. And we need to be ruthless. Ruud van Nistelrooy went on Monday. Like, we need to be ruthless. And if we're going to be... Ruud did not deserve that. Life's not fair, but he didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve it. It was the right decision, but he didn't deserve it. He came here, he refused the Burnley job as a manager to come and be an assistant at Manchester United, and 4 months later, he's basically sacked. He didn't deserve that. That was ruthless. There are players in this football club that do deserve it. So if we're going to treat Ruud like that, and I agree with it, I'm not saying we've treated him badly, not saying that at all. I think it was the right decision, but when you look at it from Ruud's situation, it's really crap. You know, have you ever been in a life situation where you go, God, that was, you know, that is just a horrible... There's nothing I could have done about it. I've done everything right. You know, I've worked hard. I've you know, everyone liked me, etc. And I've just, you know, it's almost like the old last one in, first one out scenario, isn't it? So, look, we need to be ruthless with players. Of course we do. But there were number 10s behind the striker, says Ben Jones. At least Amorim will have some options to either mould, use or move on and look again in the window, says Keegan Daniel. Artist Jen says, I see so many people saying to get rid of Rasmus. Why not wait and see what he can do with the manager? Oh, 100%. 100%. Will Cooking with Goldbridge ever be back, says Casper. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'd love to bring it back, but there's so much stuff I'm working on at the moment. Some pretty big stuff as well, which I obviously will reveal when we know about it. I'd love to be doing it, but yeah. Will there be a second book coming out, says Bill? Well, depends how well the first book does, really. Make sure you get it for Christmas. We always give out about being unable to sell players like City, says Rory C. If he ain't going to cut it, we should sell. Remember Nolito at City, offloaded quickly. Rory, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Nothing should be off the table. And I'm going to talk about what was said about Rashford in a minute, but I would say this. No player should be being written off, but no player should be safe. How does that work? It works simply because everybody should be starting off from here. No player should be, let's get rid of him before Amorim's even started, but no player should be, he's safe. And that's what should be happening here. No bias, no favouritism. If a player under Amorim does really well for the next 2 years, fair play. If a player who's been doing well for the last 2 years doesn't work under Amorim, get rid. And that's I'm so open-minded on this. I've seen people saying Martinez won't work and he'll need to be sold. I've seen people saying Rashford will be a superstar under Amorim and it'll be amazing. And I'm sort of like, well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Hi, Mark. With Amorim, the type to change players' positions, do you think the left-footed wingers will be on the left and the right wingers on the right? I don't know. We'll have to see, Wookie. I've got no idea. Thank you very much. Are you going to take over Gary Lineker at Match of the Day, says Anthony? I tell you what, Match of the Day viewing figures would go through the bloody roof for at least a week. But absolutely not. The mainstream's dead, mate. They haven't got a bloody clue. Let them sink themselves. Anyway, moving on from Xerxes. Well, 55% of you say he's got a future at United. 45% of you say no. That is not as convincing as you would hope for a brand new signing at Manchester United. Morning to Brian Govinder. He says morning to the chat. Thank you very much for that. And A. Knoll says, Mark, the other day you was on about players playing better under new management. It won't happen. The new manager needs to have a good clearance. I think it will. I think it will. And this leads lovely into... Look, this was... I forget who it was. I should have written it down. I think it was on the Simon Jordan and Jim White show. And so it could have been one of them. It could have been Mataface, Alex Crook. It'd be one of those lot. But it was on TalkSport. And this is what they were saying about Marcus Rashford. Now, I'm not shouting out TalkSport as the oracle, far from it, or Sky or TNT. But what I'm saying is, what I'm about to read here is very much a general consensus opinion in relation to Rashford. And it says, I'm not convinced he fits in under Ruben Amorim. This was on TalkSport. I'm not convinced he fits in under Ruben Amorim because we know he wants to play this 3-4-3 formation. That's more of a 2 in behind a central striker rather than without and out wingers, as Rashford clearly prefers to play. It wouldn't surprise me in the fullness of time when Amorim gets his feet under the desk, he realises that Rashford doesn't really have the tools to do the job he wants, and Manchester United have got a very high paid player who doesn't really fit. So, look, that's probably an opinion that you've seen multiple times over the last 18 months and over the last few days since Amorim's come in. It's not shock. It's not breaking news. It's slow sports news, let's be honest. But I sort of would file this under any story about Xerxes, any story about Eriksen, any story about Casemiro, Maguire, Lindelof, Johnny Evans, or any other player that people are assuming will not fit in to an Amorim system. I actually think that, people say, for example, sticking with Rashford then, he won't run. He doesn't run. And I've seen that. I've seen in the FA Cup final when we lost to Man City, so not this one, the one before. So 18 months ago, I've seen him in an FA Cup final where a ball's in the air, he's looking at it and just lets a Man City player go and control it while he sort of just jogs alongside it. I've seen this. But I actually think he was worse last season for not tracking back and jogging. I mean, there was that Liverpool goal where he just didn't. I actually think last season he was worse for not putting the effort in than he is this season. And yet people still keep talking about it. But as I said with Xerxes, he's going to run now. I don't know why he wasn't running before, but he's going to run now. They're all going to run now. People need to stop judging players on what has gone before, because this is Manchester United. We've seen a Man United side look absolutely crap in the last few days of Mourinho, and then suddenly break the Premier League winning streak for a new manager under Ollie. So people need to realise that if you're going into this Amorim era with preconceptions, you're going to generate stress. Because if you go into this Amorim era going, this player, this player, this player, this player are definitely not going to work, and then they do work, your opinion of those players is probably going to be quite negative, because you're going to be, well, I thought they weren't going to work, and oh, what a surprise, here's a new manager and they start working. So, and that's a negative mindset. I think we've all got to go into this with a positive mindset. And I think that, look, that particular thing on TalkSport about Rashford is not unique. I think it's a lot of people's opinions. And I would acknowledge there have been times where you watch him and the body language isn't good and the running's not good, but he's not the only player. He's not the only player who does that. You're telling me that every player, apart from Marcus Rashford, has been putting in 6, 7, 8 out of 10 and running really hard. They haven't. This is a consistent thing that's been going on for a long time. And of course, Rashford's one of those players that's been doing it. But I'll tell you right here, right now, you're going to see them run against Ipswich. They're going to run against Bodo Glimt. They're going to run against Everton because they're playing for the future. I think what's happened over the last 2 years is that Erik ten Hag was here for 2.5 years. And after year one, they got complacent. They got lazy. They were like, I can get away with this. I don't need to do this. Under a new manager, it won't happen. It absolutely won't happen. They are not going to continue to not run or, not put the effort in. You're going to see players running their arse off for the next few weeks and months. The real issue will be, when do they stop doing that, or do they never stop doing that? Because that is the thing that we've seen time and time before, and we need to see something different. But yeah, I think Amorim will sell players, but I'm more of the mindset of, I think everybody has a chance and everybody's not safe. And if you can get your head around that, that's sort of where I am. I don't think any player's safe, and I don't think any player is guaranteed to get game time either. And that's where we're looking at, isn't it? I can't see any players leaving before the summer, says Patrick. Amorim hasn't even taken a training session yet. How can he have proper assessment of any yet? No. January transfer window. Very, very quickly on that, because we've got quite a few bits to get through. In relation to the January transfer window, I just see opportunism. I don't see plan. I don't think that, you never get... Look, Xerxes would be a possibility at a stretch in January, but even that I don't think would happen. Eriksen, with a few months left on his contract, Lindelof would be a stretch in January, but I don't really see it happening. What I see in January is, can we get a couple of players in? Can we get a couple of opportunistic players in that help us? Maybe a loan deal, maybe a cheap deal, maybe a cheap striker. And I think that's a good thing. Would you rather in January we were focused on removing players, or bringing in a couple of opportunistic players. And I think January will be about that, because what could happen in January, and we've seen this so many times before. I remember talking about it with Ollie, certainly with Ten Hag. There might be a player or two that you bring in January that could be the difference between 6th and 5th, and 5th could be the Champions League football, or semi-final of the Europa League and winning it. So I think I think that's what Man United will look at in January. And I think you're right, Patrick, that you've got to assess the players and see what they do. With Xerxes, there's a player in there that could be beneficial if Amorim can mould him into what he needs, maybe slot into a different role, says Miles. Look, we spoke a lot about Xerxes this morning. My opinion with him at the moment is that he can be a really good player, but I don't see how he starts. I would love to see a place for him in the starting team, but I think he already looks like a player that won't start. And to be honest, I think Mason Mount's the same. So are they good enough to be bench players in a team where we want to go? Or is it a bad thing to already be classing people as bench players? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. You do need bench players, but I think some clubs like Man City, it's hard to tell who the bench players are. You think it's Grealish, you think it's Doku, and then they're starting. You think, and then Foden's on the bench. So I would rather have real quality first team players that you can't predict who's in the team and who's out of the team. But I do look at Xerxes and Mount at the moment, and obviously I'm basing that on the past, which is unfair. And I look at them and I go, bench players. I don't see them as starters. But then I've got to swallow my own pill and go, it's a clean slate for everybody. Nobody's safe. Ruthless and now rudeless, says Ridwan. Thank you very much for that. Keegan, Daniel, I think we've done that one as well. The fans need to stick with Amorim to the end of the season, even if the start isn't a good one. He has to work into it. I think they will, ISO. I think they will. The confidence I have in our future since Ineos, says Robert McCormack. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on, because onto more positive stuff. Fabrizio, who, I don't know whether I've said this before. I don't think I did say this yesterday. I think it was one of those conversations in my head, probably in the shower. Anyway, Fabrizio Romano has basically been talking about Amorim. Now, what I will say about this is that it's... Look, basically the headline is, and it's from Fabrizio Romano, Ruben Amorim and his staff consider Lenny Yoro one of the most interesting players to develop for Man United's long-term project. I have to take a deep breath here, and you'll know why. You'll know why. There's two words here that are just going to send me back to the past and make me feel sad. So he's considered a generational talent by the club and Amorim, with his staff fully in agreement on that. Generational talent was a word that we spoke about a lot on this channel probably 3-4 years ago. But look, we're talking Yoro, and that's quite a big update. Yoro is considered to be the most exciting, interesting player to develop under the Amorim project, and he's considered a generational talent by the club and Amorim, with his staff fully in agreement on that. This is really exciting. He's never played a competitive game for Manchester United. He's only 18 years of age, and obviously he is like a new signing, because he is a new signing. We've not seen him yet. What's the problem with generational talent, Mark? Well, I used it, and we used it with Mason Greenwood from a very, very, very early stage, and I don't use those words lightly. I don't think you use those words lightly. And I genuinely felt that we had that. He's 19 today, by the way. Happy birthday to Yoro. Thanks everyone in the chat there. Yeah, look, Mason Greenwood's playing for Marseille now. What happened. I think a lot of people are relieved that it's not happening and the drama's gone. But you can't hide from the past. I genuinely thought he was going to be a generational talent in a Man United shirt, and obviously it didn't happen. So I'm very sort of not allergic, but I get worried when I see those words, generational talent. But it is exciting, because I think with a 3 centre-back system, the Yoro return becomes very exciting. I think under Ten Hag, the Yoro return would have been a bit like, well, how is this going to work? Because he loved Martinez on the left, and De Ligt is developing really, really well. So if Yoro comes back, which he would have done, and Ten Hag was still here, you'd be sort of like, where's Yoro getting into this team? Like, because Obviously, Ten Hag would have loved De Ligt and Martinez. But with a 3 centre-back system, you're like, well, Yoro walks straight into this team as soon as he's match fit. So, yeah, very excited to see how he's going to develop. But also, I think that we have got to be a bit careful. I mean, that was a long injury layoff. I think we knew that injury was coming with him as well. But look, very, very excited to see what he's going to do. Thank you very much for that. That was from me, actually. The day any player stops doing what Ruben Amorim asked them to do is the day they're off to the chopping board. This would send a clear and ruthless message to all the players, says Sijit. Thank you very much for that. Just because you say generational talent, yeah, I'm going to put you in a timeout for that, bike guy, because I don't know how you've even come to that conclusion. My point was, using the word generational talent against a player can be a bit of a jinx. You know, he might go and get injured. He might not deliver what he is. I just think we've got to look at it and you know, be really on board with what we're doing. And sorry, just should have put that on silent. There we go. I hate that ringtone. Yeah, we need to be really on board with what we're trying to do and make sure that we're working hard every single day, which is what Amorim will do. I don't think there's no guarantees. Again, it goes back to the point of, I think everybody's got a chance under Amorim, but also there is a issue with regards to nobody's safe, is it? Is the British media turning on Big Ange now that Ten Hag is gone while our new coach is beginning to settle in, says John Walker. Mate, look, the media have got something to do. They're always going to do something. Maybe they will go after Big Ange, but I'll tell you now, Man United will always be their biggest story. So there is a cycle. I told you this cycle. You know this cycle. The media cycle is, you know, Man United manager comes in, let's hype them, let's get really excited about them, let's be their friend, let's talk about them, let's say they're the greatest thing ever. And then after a few months, oh, cracks are appearing, oh, is it going wrong? Oh, dressing room leaks. Do that for about the next year or so, and then start with the, oh yeah, he needs to go. And then you get him out, and then you go through the process again. I mean, we're all old enough to remember that when Ten Hag first came in, there was a lot of hype around Ten Hag. When Mourinho came in, it was major excitement. When Ollie got the job, major excitement. And then you end up back round where we are. Sean Turner says, do not be surprised if he brings Lindelof into the back three system. He's played with him, he's tall and can step in the middle because he's good on the ball. Martinez could be on the bench once Yoro returns, says Sean Turner. I mean, that to me sounds absolutely shocking, but I also think that it's very much a trust thing. I don't know if this fan base is capable of dealing with first game against Ipswich, Ahmad on the bench. I could say other players, but I don't know whether this fan base can deal with that, because I think we've become so strange around match days and team selections and player FC. I mean, that sort of thing, straight away, I can just imagine certain fans going, oh yeah, he's a fucking idiot and this, that and the other. I'm like, that can't happen. That can't happen. And I think the best way to train yourself over the next few days is to actually start thinking, what if he does drop De Ligt? What if he does drop Ahmad? You know, we can't have free Ahmad if he's not playing against Ipswich. Because we're Manchester United FC, we're not player FC. And nobody should be safe and everybody should be given a chance. And I think Ahmad will play, Roy, but don't get obsessed with it. And I only used Ahmad as an example because we have had free Ahmad for the last 8 months. But we can't, we're not the managers. We can have an opinion, but we're not the managers. And after 2 years, you can have an even stronger opinion, but you've got to give this manager a chance. You've got to give him a chance. Dan, welcome to Members Club. Thank you very much. And Mayank says, we need to consider that Amorim will be more in a coach role and less as a manager, meaning he'll have to work with players Ineos approve. I completely disagree with this. I think that the recruitment team obviously wants to run a system where they have the power, and Ten Hag had a veto, which has now been removed from Amorim. But I think people have a misconception that Ineos are going to be there going, we've got you Harvey Barnes and Marcus Albrighton. You know, we want to get that Leicester winger thing going on. We've just sold Yoro for a fiver. These things aren't going to happen because those people will get the sack. Dan Ashworth isn't related to Sir Jim Radcliffe. He has been employed on a recommendation that he can do the job. If he fails, he'll be sacked. If Jason Wilcox fails, he'll be sacked. If Barada fails, he'll be sacked. Their job is on the line just as much as Amorim's job is on the line. And there is no point in having a board that doesn't work with the manager. All that's happened is that Amorim doesn't have a veto. He doesn't have the power to say, sell this player, I don't care what you think, or buy this player, I don't care what you think. There has to be an agreement from that board for anything that Amorim suggests. But if Man United don't speak to Amorim about what players to buy or what players to sell, we will fail, and they will all fail. So yeah, I don't worry about that. Terminate says, remembering De Ligt struggles to have a manager stay for a season since leaving Ajax. It's a weird one. Yeah, basically he's never played under a manager for more than a season since he left Ajax, which is just incredible, really. Yazza says, like Mark called people toxic positivity, it seems he's doing the same now. Do not know what you're talking about, mate. Actually, don't. You need to, if you're going to put a sentence out, put it into AI or something and say, does this make sense? Because it's a lot easier for everybody watching and me if you actually state what it is you're trying to say. Anyway, let's move on. More stuff to get into. Just quickly, by the way, obviously we spoke last night about how Malacia was playing. Kone played last night, went off injured. So hopefully the injury curse isn't going to be an issue again, because we don't want to see any long-term injuries. He's very, very highly considered, and obviously wants to be... obviously people want him to be an important player for Manchester United. So hopefully that's not too bad. But just a bit of a note on that. Malacia came through it okay as well. Spoken about Yoro. Oh, yes, just on the stadium. Let me just bring you this because I'll forget. It's not necessarily... So I know a lot of people are interested in this. I should get more interested in it. I'm not interested in it, but here we go. This is coming in from Chris Wheeler in the Daily Mail. The process of deciding the future of Old Trafford. So we're talking about the stadium here, whether it's going to be a new stadium or a redevelopment. Obviously, that poll from match-going fans leaned more towards a new stadium. I'm not actually convinced about that poll, by the way, because every poll I've seen and every poll we've done, it's way more 50-50 than 60-40. I think it was 62% new stadium and 38% not. That just seems a little... I'm not saying new stadium poll wouldn't win, but it just seemed a bit too much. But anyway, I wasn't part of that. Anyway, the process of deciding the future of Old Trafford will enter a new phase this week when local residents have the opportunity to give their views. The Stadium Task Force have already canvassed fans over their preferences for a brand new Wembley of the North. Now members of the local public who are not necessarily United fans will be asked what they want from a wider generation of the area and how it can best serve the community in terms of sport, entertainment and retail facilities. Residents within a 2-mile radius of Old Trafford have received leaflets directing them to an online survey which goes live today. People from further afield can give their opinions and raise any concerns, but the results will be partly based on postcode data. There we go. So if you've ever been to Old Trafford, there is a lot of residential houses, some very, very close actually. In fact, from our studio where you look over Old Trafford, there are a load of terraced houses the closer you get to Old Trafford. So people in the area will be asked for their thoughts. And I don't know. I think we're in a situation where by the summer we should have some indication of what's happening. But some people are interested in that. I mean, I am interested in that, but I'm not interested in that as much as I am in Amorim and what's about to happen and how we're going to perform on the pitch. I think ultimately we're going to end up with a new stadium and Old Trafford being knocked down because of the Glazers. And every time I talk about that, it just frustrates me. Not that we're going to get a new stadium, but because we have to get a new stadium because the Glazers let it rust. And you look at Anfield, which is a state-of-the-art stadium that's been there for years, and they've managed to maintain it and modernise it, and the Glazers have let Old Trafford rust. So I understand why people want one, because Old Trafford is rusting, but it never should have rusted in the first place. We never should be having this chat, because it should be a state-of-the-art stadium that we looked after. Simple. Okay, next topic. Let's talk about, spoke about Kone. I just got to bring this in, actually. It was in the chat last night. It was in the comments section last night. And I thought I'll bring this into the show. Just a little bit of loving the content. Cyril out, says Luke Birch. Thank you very much. Rio again. So basically, he said that Garnacho reminds him of Nani. And I was just like, why do we always have to... He does it a lot, but why do we always have to take a modern player and say, he reminds me of this? And it's always a player that they played with. Oh, it reminds me of Pogba. It reminds me of this. Actually, yeah, he would have played with Pogba when he was a youth player. Garnacho and Nani. I just do not see it. I just don't see it. And this is for an older generation, probably. But Garnacho and Nani, no. I don't see it at all. Absolute not at all. Nani on his day was brilliant. Had an amazing shot on him. I mean, his biggest thing was his shot. I don't see any link between Garnacho and Nani at all. I thought I'd just bring it in as a little bit of a conversation topic, but I don't actually think Garnacho reminds me of any winger that's ever played for Man United. He's nothing like Giggs. He's nothing like Ronaldo. He's nothing like Nani. He's nothing like Beckham. He's nothing like Rashford. He's just a unique player, and let him get on with it. These sort of things just don't help. Oh, he reminds me of Nani. He reminds me of Ronaldo. He doesn't. He doesn't. And he reminds me of a young player that's got a lot of talent that just needs to be focused on that and ignore the external noise of what can happen when you become a Man United player. Talking about becoming a Man United player, Branthwaite. Mentioned this to you last week. This won't happen in January, of course, because it's not going to be an opportunistic signing in January. Everton are not going to do that deal. But the Branthwaite deal is still very much high up for Manchester United. It was a high priority signing last summer. It's still a high priority signing now. This becomes, and it goes back to the previous comment about Amorim's ability to sign players. Branthwaite is more likely now than he was in the summer, and we wanted him in the summer. Basically, at the start of the summer, Man United had three high priority signings. Didn't get any of them. Elise went to Bayern Munich, Sesko stayed at Leipzig, and Branthwaite stayed at Everton. But those three players were certainly three high priority Ineos signings that Ten Hag actually did sign off on all three of them. We didn't get them. Two of them are still actually available. Sesko's still at Leipzig and Branthwaite is still at Everton. But we will go back in for that. We will go back in for that because it's in an even stronger position now because Ineos want Branthwaite. Ten Hag had a veto, but he did want Branthwaite. Ineos don't have Amorim saying, I don't want him anymore. Or saying he can't have him now. So I think Branthwaite is going to end up at Manchester United, especially with the three centre-back situation. I think that is a deal that United will really, really want to do. There is really, and I don't know who's driving it. Some people think it's Ashworth. Some people think it's Wilcox. Some people think it was, Rude. Even Rude had a connection to it, but Rude's gone. But they really do want Branthwaite, and I think that he is a player that you've got to seriously consider will probably be wearing a Man United shirt by this time next year because I think United will go back in. He's homegrown as well. You've got to be very careful about that, especially if people like Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire go in the summer. very big doubts over the likes of Mason Mount and Luke Shaw, 2 more homegrown players. Marcus Rashford, another homegrown player. I mean, out of the homegrown players, there's not actually that many that you go, they're going to be part of our future for the long term. There isn't that many. Mainu, of course, jumps out massively. And predominantly, it's just young players coming through there. But I suppose, as Orca says, what about the price? Look, what about the price tag is always going to be very, very interesting. But I think he's going to be a player that Man United certainly look to go for. Do you know who Sporting centre-backs are, says John? I think if there was one Sporting centre-back that Amorim would bring with him, it would be a Diamonde, who obviously played very well against Man City a week ago, but is also a player that's been linked to us for probably 18 months. I think that would be the player they would want. But I don't think it will happen because Sporting will want a lot of money for any player, as they always do. Sporting and Benfica don't sell players cheap. I mean, how much did they get for Darwin Nunez? How much did they get for João Felix? Talking about Benfica. They got £60 million out of us for Bruno however many years ago. So, obviously, there will be links to players from Sporting, but we're not a rich club as well. We don't have a lot of money. And it's hard to see where this money is coming from. You have to provide a transfer fund for a new manager. And a new manager is not going to come here without the promise of transfer funds. It'll be a big thing. And remember, on a positive note, Amorim was in a strong position. Amorim was in a job doing very well with very strong links to being the next Man City manager. So to take him out of that scenario at Sporting and potentially Man City, you've got to offer him a lot of things to do it. Now, obviously, he clearly wanted the Man United job, but I don't think he took the Man United job with, I'll do anything. I don't think you leave Sporting and a potential Man City job and then bend over backwards for whatever Man United want. I think he has brought all his coaching staff. I think he will be given a lot of control around a lot of things. And I think he will be given a transfer budget. Otherwise, I don't think he would have come. Because it doesn't matter how much you want to be Man United manager. I'd like to be Man United manager, but if I didn't have a budget, there's no point. So he will have a budget. I don't know where that money comes from, though. And I don't know how much it will be. Erik Ten Hag spent a lot of money. But I think the positive about what was spent on Ten Hag is that every single one of those players, Amorim, I think, can use. We've spoken about Yoro. He knows Agate. So there is £110 million of Ten Hag's summer signings will fit Amorim really well. De Ligt, I think, will work. That's 3. Mazraoui will work. That's 4. So the only player that might not work is Xerxes. Now, if you're Amorim and you're coming in, or you're Ineos and you're giving him the keys to the kingdom, that's quite a positive, isn't it? That you've spent £200 million in the summer, and 4 of those players are actually going to be really useful to the new manager. Because I look, when Mourinho came in, he was almost looking at every Van Gaal signing, of which there were plenty, and going, you're not for me, you're not for me, you're not for me. And Van Gaal had a lot of money, and it was almost like Jose went, well, they're not my players. No, not interested in Martial, not interested in Schneiderlin, not interested in these players. I want my own. Whereas I think Amorim will come in and go, to be fair, I'd be happy with most of those signings if I was in charge. So I think that's a positive as well. But he will need more. Hyen says McTominay would have been an important player. Mate, if you want to talk about McTominay, go and support Napoli. Guess what? He got sold. Deal with it. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. He plays for Napoli. Go and buy a Napoli shirt. They're top of the league. Couldn't give a shit about McTominay. He doesn't play for Man United anymore. Amorim would have done this, would he? Oh, great. Don't care. Look, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I've just expressed mine. Don't care about Amorim. I don't care about McTominay. Doesn't play for Man United. Really glad we sold him. Good move for him. Really good money. Pure profit. Happy with Agate. End of the day. Sometimes we've got to get used to the fact that we're selling players that are decent to get decent money. It's about, you can sell a decent player if it helps you build something else. What's the point in keeping McTominay and not getting Agate? It was a very good deal. I actually think it was a brilliant deal by Ineos, and I can't believe that people think we shouldn't have done it, because if we kept McTominay, we wouldn't have got Agate. So it's as simple as that. Sometimes you have a nice car on the drive, you really like it, but you sell it to get a better car. You're not always selling a banger. And I just, again, I do worry about some of our fans, because I think if Amorim doesn't pick their favourite, they'll start going, eh. And I also think that some people think you only sell shit, and you don't. Sometimes you upgrade. You go, I really like it. It's going to be sad to get rid of that car on the drive. It's been a really good car, and I really do like it. And I hope it's going to a good home, but I need an upgrade. And that's what we did. It's what we did with Wan-Bissaka as well. We might have to do it with a few others. Keel's just come up with a great one. A great player, I'd cash in on Delo, though. I mean, there is another example. Maybe Delo could be the next McTominay, where a load of people going, I can't believe he's gone there and he's doing really well. Maybe he's not going to suit the system. Maybe I saw somebody in the chat last night saying the big concern about this new system and Luke Shaw and Malacia coming back is that how do Mazraoui and Delo get in the same team? How do they both get in the same team? I think one of them will. But you can see a team where neither of them do. I can't see a team where both of them do. So one of those players, maybe you... I mean, it can't be Mazraoui, but maybe Delo is the next McTominay. Maybe Delo you probably get 30, 40, 50 million pounds from. You know, maybe you move Delo on to bring another winger in. If McTominay led to Agate, great. If Delo led to Quenda or another winger, maybe that's the right thing to do. But people need to get into that mentality of nobody's safe and Amorim's in charge. Simple as that. 15,000 people watching this morning. Absolute legends as usual. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, bottom right-hand corner. Don't forget the 8 o'clock show tonight. They've been absolutely brilliant so far this week, and we've got another cracker lined up for you tonight. Really heated, in-depth debate that we don't normally get to do with all the games and stuff. Thanks everyone for watching this morning. Smash a like and subscribe. We're back at 2 o'clock as well. Got a very interesting video at 2 o'clock. Loved the 2 o'clock video yesterday about Mazraoui, by the way. I think I'll do another one of those soon. Take care. Stay safe. I'll speak to you all in a bit.